All right, guys. Well, why don't we go ahead and get kicked off? This is the first of our CISO debate series that may or may not be a series, depending on how much you guys all appreciate this. But let's get kicked off here. Who do we have players here? My name is Rob Reck. I'm the field CISO for Red Canary, previously the chief trust officer here, and I was also the CISO for a handful of other companies before coming to Red Canary about a year and a half ago. We have Ryan Hammer. Ryan, you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. Really nice to see everybody, and thanks for joining the event.
And Ryan is the CISO for Sienna Networks. G-Mark Hardy. G-Mark, you want to say hello?
No. Okay, fine, if you insist.
We G-Mark, we'll talk about your background, but the CIO and CISO for the SureTalk group. So yeah, what we're going to talk about today is attacker attribution important? And we're going to do this in a kind of unique to what I've ever seen a style. We're going to use the debate format. So when I was in college, I actually was a part of the forensics team, and we were given a topic that we were given the pro or the con side for. And I remember many a time, they flip a coin and say, hey, you're going to be pro or con. And we decided it would be kind of fun to have some civil discourse around a somewhat controversial topic within security and go back to that format. So why is this conversation interesting? Well, I'd say it's been one of those things that's been debated for decades. Like, is it worth using our resources to track who are behind the attacks we see? Does it matter who's behind the attacks? Does it make a difference on how you're going to defend, on how you're going to respond? Is it worth those resources? So we brought together two experts in the field and given each of them one side. We have Ryan, who's going to be taking the pro, and G-Mark, who's taking the con. And we're going to let them go at it and see what comes up here. So Ryan Hammer, we already mentioned he's a CISO for Sienna, but he's been doing this for 15 years. He's built security, compliance, and risk programs and privacy across financial, insurance, industrial sectors. Really interested in IoT, and I've had some great conversations there. Privacy and product development, lots of good stuff. Ryan, I'm looking forward to who I've already got to know you. Looking forward to more here. G-Mark, sorry, my slide is once again slowly going forward.
You have some lazy pixels. Yeah,
I got some lazy pixels here. G-Mark, the founder and president of the National Security Corporation, retired U.S. Navy captain. Thank you for your service. 9 tours. That seemed like a lot of tours. Appreciate you doing that. The co-host for the CISO Tradecraft podcast, which if you guys like listening to G-Mark talk, you might want to sign up for that.
Well, I do have a face for radio.
Lots of great learnings here, your education and certifications, and like we mentioned, currently the CIO and CISO for the SureTalk group. All right, what's our format look like? We're not going to be here all day. We're keeping this to 30 minutes. Ryan's going to get 5 minutes to make the pro case. G-Mark will get 2 minutes to respond, to rebut what Ryan said. And then G-Mark will get 5 minutes to make his case, and Ryan will close us out with 2 minutes to rebut his con case. After that, we'll give the audience the chance to vote on our winner. There will be a winner crowned here today, and you guys will be a part of picking that. And then we'll wrap things up. With that, let's debate. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and put up the timer, and I'm going to hand it to Ryan to take over. Give me a second here, Ryan.
And as much fun as it would have been to do this in a Hamilton-style rap battle, I just don't think we could pull that off. So you're stuck with just plain narrative from us today.
All right, here we go. I'm starting our timer.
Okay, timer started. So my position is that attacker attribution is exceptionally important for 3 key points. And I'm going to start with the tactical and move to the strategic. So you mentioned earlier, Rob, the value of understanding your adversary's tactics and techniques from both a detective, preventative, and responsive piece. During a security incident, attackers, just like anyone else, tend to be creatures of habit. They have a tendency to follow a path with perhaps some minor deviations, but they stick to what really works well for them. So this can telegraph these next actions to us as defenders or responders. So this aligns well, of course, with the cyber kill chain, but for that even greater level of fidelity, resource we all know and love, the MITRE ATT&CK framework, provides very clear traceability between adversary tactics and techniques and the groups that are accountable and responsible for using these to attack their targets. So a solid understanding of this can help us as defenders implement more effective preventative controls and facilitate more effective detective and responsive capabilities. But it requires us and our incident response teams, of course, to drill for these scenarios, to have virtual scrimmages against someone playing the role of an adversary using the tactics and techniques commonly used by these specific groups. So I'm going to sprinkle in your first actionable takeaway is use a little Google Kung Fu to do a site search against attack.mitre.org/groups for your industry. And you'll see what the professionals, what the professional bad guys are doing to compromise organizations and what's worked well for them. So that first point, attribution, facilitates a much more effective ability to prevent and respond to security incidents. My second point is that attribution effectively facilitates a much more efficient community discussion, specifically when we're talking about aligning incidents and campaigns back to adversary groups and using that to be thoughtful and predictive around trends for targeting, targets, and motivation. So it's the old adage of you have to name it to tame it. So applying a taxonomy and cataloging attacker groups helps us psychologically put a little bit of structure around this overwhelming melee of faceless attackers. We start to think about them as groups, and they have attributes, and we can start to talk and share information around how we're going to build our defenses and how we respond to this activity. So if you're operationalizing a predict, prevent, detect, respond kind of loop based upon what you think are your most likely adversaries, please leverage the force multiplier that is the information security community. There are a lot of people who are doing work out there that have a deep insight and understanding into the nature of these adversaries and some of the tactics they're doing. So without attribution, we would be calling them different things. We would be talking about discrete and atomic tactics without aligning them in traceability back to an organization. So very important. So my last point for point two here is that build those communities, build those relationships, get comfortable sharing information. And if you, most importantly, have a security incident, although it's going to piss off your general counsel and legal team, you need to get comfortable sharing some of those actionable details. None of us should be suffering in silence, and we need to learn from the pain that others are feeling and the lessons learned from some of these other incidents. So applying that taxonomy and having that attribution helps us think, helps us be thoughtful about who and what we're talking about. So my third point here is that attribution is absolutely fundamental to facilitating effective law enforcement. So when we think about risk, we often think that it's kind of the union of threats, vulnerabilities, and assets. Assets are what they are. We as security professionals spend our career trying to drive down vulnerabilities. And it's not just patching things, it's really implementing the preventative, protective, and detective controls. So unless you're in federal law enforcement, removing and reducing those threats is really outside of our jurisdiction. But we can support law enforcement by collecting this information, by collaborating with law enforcement, and really by being thoughtful about attributing attacker tactics and incidents and campaigns back to the adversary so that they can go execute on that. That's my 5 minutes.
All right, perfect timing.
All right, right on the numbers. Well done, sir.
Well done. Now, G-Mark, you're going to get 2 minutes to rebut. Go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you. My esteemed colleague has brought out a number of interesting points, which are interesting for discussion and perhaps in some cases valuable, but I don't think necessarily for the CISOs. And here's why. Your first point, saying attackers are creatures of habit. Of course, all humans are creatures of habit, but a well-versed attacker understands the concept of a false flag. And the best attackers are going to false flag their attacks, allowing somebody who relies upon previous attribution knowledge to be lulled into a sense of security, thinking it's this attacker A, when in fact it's really attacker B. And we see enough false flag activities out there that we're just kind of walking into a trap if we believe that attribution is going to help solve our problem of whodunit. And from that perspective, I suggest that although that part of our approach is useful, even using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, the attacker is going to try to look like somebody else. And as a result, we don't go so far as we could. Your second point that you brought up, talking about being able to bring things into a community and share your information, sounds great, except nobody tells. Let's face it, I'm a member of the CISO. I can't get in there and say, we just got this breach and this went down, this is horrible. It's like talking about your, personal performance issues on the internet. We just don't do that. Maybe with your doctor, maybe with your therapist, maybe with your spouse, but that's not for general consumption. So most organizations don't let you do that, or you'd have to be so highly redacted that you can't get that information out. Thus, I suggest, although it's nice, it's not practical. And lastly, your third point, I got to admit, I absolutely agree with you. You said attribution is fundamental to law enforcement. Bingo. Guess what? I'm not in law enforcement. That's their job, not my job. And they're going to do the gumshoe work. I'm going to focus on going ahead, not necessarily doing the investigation. I reduce vulnerabilities and they go chase the bad guys. I stay in my lane and they stay in their lane and we're all happy.
And once again, perfect timing. Well done. All right, Mark, you ready to give us your con argument?
I suppose. Let me get my little timer ready to go so I can be in local mode. Let's make it happen.
All right, here we go.
Okay, one of the questions about attribution that we bring up is important, but let's think about it. Fundamentally, attribution is a legal issue. It's not a technical issue. Now, in doing my research for this, Del Bertrand, who's the Yale law school professor, he states, the question of what counts as a sufficient degree of certainty is an answerable, purely legal question. Thus, the question is no longer whether cyber attacks can be attributed. Instead, it's how the international community might configure a system of law to do so. And that is outside of our purview. If you look at all of the cybersecurity data that you could collect, threat data is really the most ephemeral out there. There's more value in sharing malicious IPs and identifying that my attacker was APT227 versus APT223. Realistically, why do you care which Chinese actor, for example, is after you? How does that really change your defense strategy? Sure, we can go back and look at MITRE ATT&CK techniques and try to figure out what prior victims have mapped into it, but attackers are not static. They change your tactics and techniques regularly, as well as we should as well. Now, once an IP is known to be malicious, you start blocking it. And what's an attacker going to do? They're just going to pivot to a new IP address. Now, in IPv6 space, that's essentially an infinite tail chase for the defender. I mean, seriously, how do you do attribution with 10 to the 38th power IP addresses? Now, based on years of intelligence, it's really often impossible to understand exactly where an attack came from. Let's consider a smaller operator. If an attack came from a Starbucks or a Panera IP address, could have been anyone. Good luck with that. And even if the store has video, you're not going to get it because they don't have a dog in the fight. And besides, remember these three letters, VPN. Besides, what if an attack comes from another jurisdiction where there's no legal reciprocity? So what? You can't do anything with it. From a technology perspective, think about what our promises are. Zero trust. And if we achieve the promises of zero trust, the vendors say that these external attacks will just all go away and all internal communications will be fully documented. At that point, attribution is just merely a log entry. It collapses this entire argument into a tautology. All user actions are immediately attributed. But we're not there right now. Think about it. The majorities of papers and presentations about attribution are generated by the product vendors and the service providers with no real measurable component, but instead a focus on trust me marketing. And we're also seeing, if I may call it, the Mandiant effect, whereby businesses believe they need a report of that type of a nature under their belt to achieve widespread respect and credibility. And commercial firms believe that they could help expose criminal behavior and support their customers by potentially reducing the threat. Do you do that with your credit cards? You get a little alert every time your card shows up? That's great, but why are you doing their work for them? You're protected under Reg E to $50 a loss, and chances are your credit card's not going to hold you accountable. But doing this in cyber, it leads to more fear in the market, forces a larger percentage of the cybersecurity budget to be directed away from the foundational security processes. And who's benefiting from this obsession on attribution? It's the vendors, it's not you, the customers. And attribution will do nothing to address the pre-compromise of key hardware and software. It often takes years to discover. The clue is stolen intellectual property showing up in patents and products and processed by others. Focusing on attribution is like trying to figure out who opened the barn door way back when. The horses are all gone. You're years too late. The solution is to upgrade the acquisition and procurement process requiring software bill of materials or SBOM. Hey, if we get this downturn in the economy they're talking about, companies historically have reduced their cybersecurity staff. And as a result, you transform a highly efficient team into a compliance block checker. And yet management expects the staff to continuously perform Herculean efforts. You know, tracking down bad guys and doing attributions, frankly, is not going to make the cut. Take a lesson from retail. Stores security focuses on the crown jewels. You don't go out of business when a kid steals a candy bar, but you might when an employee steals a warehouse full of QLED TVs. You don't care about collecting the names of the bad kids. You just put the candy bars behind the counter. Remember your job. It's to get the lights back on. Stay in your lane. Your job is to keep the company safe, not to play FBI. And speaking of FBI, if your breach doesn't meet the threshold of your local field office, FBI won't even take your case. And lastly, there's some legal advantage to not having attribution, because if you're facing ransomware and don't have attribution, you have plausible deniability, and if the attacker later is found out to be on the ITAR list. Bottom line, if you are fixated on attribution, you're fighting the last war. Go build better defenses instead.
And you got done early too. Nice.
Now, I started my timer 3 seconds ahead of yours.
All
so
right.
I had one on the clock.
All right, Ryan, throwing it over to you for your 2-minute rebuttal.
So much to unpack there, G. Mark Hardy. I could do a rebuttal for 20 minutes and probably not get to all your points. So completely understand the position. First, attribution as a legal issue. Yes, agreed, but based upon technical criteria. And the collection of that information, however disparate, is still valuable if legal intends to pursue down that path. So you had also mentioned that attribution is really outside the swim lane of a CISO and on the security side, but that the phrase of this outside of our purview or outside of our swim lane really has not worked well for us so far. So I believe is it indeed time for a change. As adversaries continue to improve their sophistication and the frequency of attack activity, we as defenders must band together to get a better understanding of what they're doing, why they're doing it, what they want, and to hold them ultimately accountable. Agreed sometimes that there are concerns around meeting a threshold, but unless federal law enforcement can aggregate connected and otherwise perceived as disparate security events across the board, they don't have the full picture. And I think we all know that there are, don't have enough resources to contend with the massive onslaught of cyber attack activity. So we are all somewhat deputized here to take our responsibility for our futures and the safety of our organization into our own hands, to have a much better understanding of who's out there working against us and the nature of their tactics and techniques. And then agreed on the foundations. I'm not saying that we put attribution ahead of the foundations, but we have to be thoughtful about this, and we have to have the ability to anticipate the nature of attack activity, whether or not it is attributed back to a specific threat actor or it is the overall universe of TTPs. All of that comes within our scope.
All right, you guys all 4 times hit your marks. Well done. This is how you get to be CISOs at such great companies. We're going to move forward. Next, we're going to move into voting. So I would ask our lovely host to start our voting for us. And you guys get to pick our winner. I think there's a couple questions here. The pro or con, pro for Ryan. And as you're voting, I have the opportunity to share a couple of fun facts about our debaters here. Ryan took 6 months off after graduating college, and he hiked the Appalachian Trail. Was the entire Appalachian Trail? Is that correct? That's pretty fantastic. Your trail name, Double Espresso.
That's right.
Pretty good stuff.
So Rob, I'll give you a 30-second story on that. So hungry and so delusional due to lack of caffeine, I started to smell coffee, right? Hiking with folks. And I'm like, do you smell coffee? I totally smell coffee. So that's how I got my trail name. Because as soon as I would get into a town, I'd get a double espresso. And they're like, that sticks. Let's use that.
And G-Mark, your fun fact for us is you built your first computer from a kit in 1975, an Altair 8800. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, there's an Altair 8800 in the Smithsonian now, although it's not mine. But for those who remember the 1983 Matthew Broderick War Games, that's what you saw in the background, the old 8800. And we used to program that in octal with switches, 10100010 load, 001001 load. And there's a gentleman who was a member of our high school who went on to MIT, who actually got the Junior Achievement Inventor of the Year award the following year, not for what he did, but he basically created a little numpad that we could actually enter data in much more quickly. And I wonder where Mark ever went. He was a brilliant guy, but yeah, that kind of predated a lot of my stuff. Good stuff.
All right. Well, while folks finish up voting, we have one more note from Red Canary. For anyone who doesn't know, Red Canary, we're a managed detection and response company. We help our customers with security operations in their own environment. If you're interested in many of the benefits that Ryan talked about attribution, where you can where we can help you figure out what kind of attacks are being used by what bad guys and make sure that those preventative controls are in place, while also avoiding the costly use of your internal resources to spend on something that's very difficult to do. Red Canary can help with that problem. We'd be happy to talk to you guys about that as we go. And I think there's another question here. If you want some outreach, that there's a pop-up here you guys can complete for that. All right, with that, I think we need to reveal the results. I'm not sure.
Let me get a quick little pitch in. So on Wednesday, I'm doing the 19th annual day with G-Mark. Okay, something I do with the CISO chapter in Maryland every year. This year, they're doing it virtually, which means if you need CPEs, start your year out great. Go ahead and take a look at your webinar chat. I made one of those very dangerous short URL shorteners, bit.ly/Gmark19. But you can get CPEs if you can listen to 7 hours of my voice. And I think you'll find it well worth your time. So thank you for letting me put that little pitch in there.
Awesome. Well, I am excited to know Adam, do you have some results for us? How do we do this?
I sure do. So let me end this one. And
I just want to say before you show it, I think both of our debaters did a fantastic job. Really well prepared, really well done. I was convinced both ways 4 times, so it's hard for me to vote.
All right, drum roll, please.
I don't know.
Oh, G-Mark.
Congratulations, G-Mark. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And although I got dinged, it said you did not answer this question. So because you don't allow the participants to answer it, so that's fine. But no, Ryan is a great guy. I mean, I got a chance to meet him at the first CISO summit that Red Canary had hosted. And whether or not the debate you win or lose, the point is that I think we're both Red Canary customers, and I'm not really making a pitch for it because I'm not getting paid for it. Really find this service to be incredibly useful. And if you're not using that, then consider strongly the advantage of being able to have some smart people who can look over your shoulder when you're not focusing directly, because I'm on planes a lot. I can't be looking at things all the time. But the folks from Red Canary, they got my back, and I really appreciate that.
Well, once again, thank you so much for everyone who put this together. G-Mark and Ryan, a lot of prep work went into this. Adam, I know you did a lot of logistical work to get this thing working for us and working behind the scenes, and Shannon supporting all this stuff. Putting this on was some work, but I had a lot of fun, and hopefully we can find a way to do another debate in the future.